Hi students, welcome to lesson number 27, Urban Poverty and Unemployment. A brief introduction for the lesson. In India, the problems of unemployment and poverty have always been major obstacles to economic development. Due to unemployment, income of the people is reduced to a large extent and they are unable to get access to education, health facilities, proper sanitation and other aspects. This causes poor quality of living and hence poor human capital and skills, which in turn lead to poverty, making a vicious circle of poverty. The governmental bodies are also required to initiate long-term measures for poverty alleviation. Generation of employment opportunities and equality in income distribution are the two key factors that are of utmost importance to deal with the dual problems of unemployment and poverty. The objectives for the lesson. After studying this unit, the student will be able to understand the concept of poverty and its types and dimensions, the causes and consequences of urban poverty and unemployment, and the measures taken up by the Government of India in tackling the problems of urban poverty and unemployment. Now, what is poverty? Poverty is a state or condition in which a person or community lacks the financial resources and essentials for a minimum standard of living. Poverty means that the income level from employment is so low that basic human needs can't be met. According to World Bank, poverty is pronounced deprivation in well-being and comprises many dimensions. It includes low incomes and the inability to acquire the basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity. Poverty also encompasses low levels of health and education, poor access to clean water and sanitation, inadequate physical security, lack of voice and insufficient capacity and opportunity to better one's life. In India, 21.9% of the population lives below the national poverty line in 2011. In 2018, almost 8% of the world's workers and their families lived on less than $190 per person per day. Now, we will understand what are the types of poverty. There are two main classifications of poverty. The first one, it is the absolute poverty, a condition where household income is below a necessary level to maintain basic living standards, that is food, shelter and housing. This condition makes it possible to compare between different countries and also over time. It was first introduced in 1990 that the $1 a day poverty line measured absolute poverty by the standards of the world's poorest countries. In October 2015, the World Bank reset it to $1.90 a day. Now, what is relative poverty? It is defined from the social perspective, that is living standards compared to the economic standards of population live in surroundings. Hence, it is a measure of income inequality. Usually, relative poverty is measured as the percentage of the population with income less than some fixed proportion of median income. Now, what is urban poverty? Urban poverty manifests itself in various forms, namely proliferation of slums and squatters, fast growth of the informal sector, increasing casualization of labor, increasing pressure on civic services, increasing educational deprivation and health contingencies. It was observed by the working group on urban poverty appointed by National Commission on Urbanization that the most pressing of the urban challenges is that posed by urban poverty. The problem of urban poverty is a manifestation of the higher incidence of marginal and low income employment in the informal sector. The vulnerability of a household to be poor may be the following types. One or multiple types of vulnerability may be found to occur in any poor household. and the first one is housing vulnerability. The lack of tenure, poor quality shelter without ownership rights, no access to individual water connection or toilets on unhealthy and unsanitary living conditions. The fact that household size affects the poverty status of a household is well known. Larger households tend to have a higher probability of being poor. Second one is the economic vulnerability. Irregular casual employment, low paid work, lack of access to credit on reasonable terms, lack of access to formal safety net programs, low ownership of productive assets, poor net worth, legal constraints to self-employment. And the third one is the social vulnerability, where it includes low education, lack of skills, low social capital, caste status, inadequate access to food security programs, lack of access to health services, exclusion from local institutions. And the personal vulnerability includes proneness to violence or intimidation, especially women, children, the elderly, disabled and destitute belonging to low caste and minority groups, lack of information, lack of access to justice. So, here most of the vulnerable households live in slums or squat on public land, and their fear of eviction is a constant source of insecurity. Further, the urban poor are highly dependent on public agencies for their daily basic needs. Support from family and community based on network is limited among the urban poor. Although slum residents live in clearly defined occupational or caste-based grouping, they necessarily do not trust each other. Many studies have shown that the threat of violence is a constant feature of urban life. This is worsened by youth underemployment, alcoholism and drug abuse, especially among men. Finally, vulnerability is more pronounced for the women folk. Feminization of poverty is a term used to describe the overwhelming representation of women among the poor. Women tend to be disproportionately represented among the poor. Poverty studies from both developed and developing countries show that women are more subjected to poverty and vulnerability than men. Beyond these structural features, there are specific groups of the urban poor who face the additional vulnerability, like the elderly, disabled, young children and women. Individuals disassociated from household are also prone to increased vulnerability, as for example, street children, beggars, sex workers and abandoned women. Now, we will understand what are the various causes of urban poverty, and some of the important causes of urban poverty are as follows. The first one, urbanization and growth of slums. Migrants from rural areas are one factor that is often noted as fueling urban poverty. The use of contractual migrant workers for construction and various informal sector activities in urban cities and towns where there is a demand for such labor display the condition in which these workers live and work. Second cause is the inequalities. Economic, social and locational basic amenities and lack of access to these forms one significant dimension of urban poverty. There is no doubt that urban area on an average are better off in terms of most basic amenities when compared to rural counterparts. For example, considering water supply in urban areas, especially for the poorer households, the issue is not as much of location of source as it is of access to and supply adequacy issues. Similarly, only 29% of urban poor households inhabit rented accommodation. In urban areas, the poor end up living on pavements, in makeshift shelters and eventually gain entry into slums and squatter settlements. Third cause is the availability of basic services. Lack of availability of basic services in poor urban area is also a phenomenon that brings out the gender dimensions of urban poverty. In the case of water, common occurrence of failure in regular or timely supply, excessive pressure on public standpipes resulting in frequent conflicts, some of which turn ugly, and violences are frequently reported. Since women are involved in undertaking these chores, they end up being more affected by these problems. In terms of having bathroom and toilet facilities in the household, 70% of urban households have bathing facilities in their homes, with non-availability of latrines reported in 26% urban households. However, it is noteworthy to dwell on the implications of urban deprivation as distinct from rural locations, given the high and increasing density in big towns and cities, leaving little or no space for open defecation. The implications on hygiene and health risk thereby affect the poorer women who have limited access to healthcare services given the economic constraints. The other cause is the migration and mobility. It is a well-known established result in development economics that there exists accelerating rural to urban migration despite the existence of positive marginal products in agriculture and significant levels of urban and unemployment. Rural-urban migration will continue as long as expected. Urban real income at the margin exceeds real agricultural product. Prospective rural migrants maximize their expected gains and therefore seek jobs in cities. From the pool of urban labor, a periodic random job selection process exists. Other important cause is the unemployment and low wage rate. The existence of a minimum level of wages in the formal sector of the urban labor market creates permanent urban unemployment. This results from the gap between the number of urban informal sector jobs available at this wage rate or higher than the number of rural migrants seeking urban employment. Now, let us try to understand what is unemployment. Unemployment occurs when a person who is actively searching for employment is unable to find work. Unemployment is often used as a measure of the health of the economy. The most frequent measure of unemployment is the unemployment rate, which is the number of unemployed people divided by the number of people in the labor force. Unemployment is a complex phenomena. In ordinary sense, it denotes a situation when a person is not gainfully employed in a productive activity and thereby does not work. According to Professor 𝗂𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧, a man is unemployed only when he is both without a job or not employed and also desires to be employed. The unemployment rate is a measure of the prevalence of unemployment and is calculated as a percentage by dividing the number of unemployed individuals by all individuals currently in the labor force. During the period of recession, an economy usually experiences a very high unemployment rate. According to the report of International Labour Organization, more than 200 million people globally, or 6% of the world's workforce, were without a job in 2012. Unemployment data show that the overall unemployment rates are not high, though they are higher in urban areas than in rural areas. The unemployed persons' day rates are higher than the rates obtained for persons, thereby indicating a high degree of intermittent unemployment. This is mainly due to the absence of regular employment for many workers. Studies have shown that casualization of labor is a main and increasing source of urban poverty. The dynamics of development in urban areas of many states during the past 2 decades has been such that rapid economic growth has not led to a corresponding decline in poverty. While income levels are rising to meet the basic nutritional needs, other equally basic needs of shelter, civic amenities, healthcare, educational and social needs, etc., are not being met in an adequate fashion. Now, what are the types of unemployment? The first one will discuss the demand deficient unemployment. Demand deficient unemployment is the biggest cause of unemployment that typically happens during a recession, when companies experience a reduction in their demand for their products or services. They respond by cutting back on their production, making it necessary to reduce their workforce within the organization. In effect, workers are laid off. Second one is a frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment refers to those workers who are in between jobs. An example is a worker who recently quits or was fired and is looking for a job in an economy that is not experiencing a recession. It is not an unhealthy thing because it is usually caused by workers trying to find a job that is more suitable to their skills. The third one, the structural unemployment. Structural unemployment happens when the skill set of a worker does not match the skills demanded by the jobs available, or alternatively when workers are available but are unable to reach the geographical location of the jobs. An example is a teaching job that requires relocation to China, but the worker cannot secure a work visa due to certain visa restrictions. It can also happen when there is a technological change in the organization, such as workflow automation, that displaces the need for human labor. The other major type, voluntary unemployment. Voluntary unemployment happens when a worker decides to leave a job because it is no longer financially compelling. An example is a worker whose take-home pay is less than his or her cost of living. The other major type is involuntary unemployment. In this type of situation, the person who is unemployed has no say in the matter. It means that a person is separated from remunerative work and devoid of wages, although he is capable of earning his wages and is also anxious to earn them. The other major type is a cyclical unemployment. This is a result of the trade cycle, which is a part of the capitalist system. In such a system, there is greater unemployment, and when there is depression, a large number of people are rendered unemployed. Since such an economic crisis is a result of trade cycle, the unemployment is a part of it. Other type is a sudden unemployment. When at the place where workers have been employed, there is some change, a large number of persons are unemployed. It all happens in the industries, trades and businesses where people are employed for a job, and suddenly when the job has ended, they are asked to go. Next one is the unemployment caused by failure of industry. In many cases, a business, a factory or an industry has to close down. There may be various factors responsible. There may be disputes among the partners, the business may give huge loss, or the business may not turn out to be useful, and so on. Other major one is the seasonal unemployment. Certain industries and traders engage workers for a particular season. When the season has ended, the workers are rendered unemployment, such as, for example, sugar industry, which is a major type of seasonal unemployment. The problem of unemployment in underdeveloped economies is different from that in developed economies. In developed economies, generally, unemployment takes the form of cyclical unemployment or frictional unemployment. Now, we will talk about the measurement of unemployment. Measurement of unemployment is a difficult task. In India, statistical unemployment are compiled by the National Sample Survey Organization. Based on different references period, a year, a week and each day of a week, NSSO provides 4 different measures of employment and unemployment. The following are some of the methods. The first one, it is the usual principal status of unemployment, which is called as UPS. This is measured as a number of persons who remain unemployment for a major part of the year. The persons covered by the survey may be classified into those working and are available for work in the principal activity, and those working or are available for work in a subsidiary activity, that is, a sector other than the principal activity. Hence, within the usual status concept, the estimates are now derived on the usual principal status as well as the usual principal and subsidiary status basis. The usual status unemployment rate is a percent rate and indicates chronic unemployment because all those who are found usually unemployed in the reference year are counted as unemployed. This measure is more appropriate to those in search of regular employment. Example, educated and skilled person who may not accept casual work. This is also referred to as open unemployment. The second measurement is usual principal and subsidiary status unemployment, that is called as UPSS. Here person is considered unemployed if besides UPS those available but unable to find work on a subsidiary basis during a year. And the third measurement is current weekly status unemployment, that is CWS. This refers to the number of persons who did not find even an hour of work during the survey. And the fourth measurement is the current daily status unemployment, which is called as CDS. And this refers to the number of persons who did not find work on a day or on some days during the survey week. The rates of unemployment differ based on different concepts, and these concepts have their own advantages and limitations, and therefore they have different implications for analysis and policy formulation. The UPS and UPSS measure reflect only long-term unemployment spells. The CWS measure captures shorter unemployment spells but ignores unemployment for less than a week. The CDS measures is the most inclusive, capturing both open as well as partial unemployment. Now that we have understood the meaning and types and measurement of unemployment, we will now look at the causes of unemployment. Some of the causes of unemployment you are commonly aware are overpopulation and lack of work. And some of the important causes of unemployment are the high rate of population growth and the consequent increase in labor force, low rate of economic growth, lack of adequate employment opportunities in non-agriculture activities, generation of seasonal employment or lack of full-time employment in agriculture, low labor absorption capacities in manufacturing and tertiary activities, shifting from labor intensive to capital and skill intensive production techniques, expansion in education system, and so on. Broadly speaking, urban unemployment may be classified into industrial unemployment and educated unemployment. And the first one is the industrial unemployment. The size of the industrial unemployment is not known because the necessary data for its estimation is not available. A disquieting phenomena, however, is that over the past years, unemployment in the industrial sectors has increased. This is the result of extremely low growth of employment in the organized manufacturing sector. It is observed that employment elasticity has significantly declined in manufacturing during the last 2 decades. There are many factors that have contributed to this decline. The first one is there has been a large increase of the economically active population in the country, while the economy has failed to grow at the pace commensurate with the growth of labor force. And secondly, it is the population in the urban areas has grown faster than in rural areas because urban unemployment of migration on a large scale from village to cities. The industrial growth in India has been very modest and thus could not absorb all those who migrate to cities with the hope of getting some job or the other. The second cause is the educated unemployment. Educated unemployment is by and large a part of urban unemployment. It is a very serious and menacing problem, yet the size of the unemployment remains largely unmeasured. Not only are there conceptual difficulties in estimating it, but the kind of statistical information that is required for its estimation is also not available. Hence, the quantitative base for analyzing the problem of educated unemployment is weak. Nonetheless, on the basis of fragmentary information available, it is not difficult to understand the basic issues involved in the problem. There are many causes of educated unemployment. The defective educational system with its theoretical bias, lack of aptitude and technical qualification for various types of work among job seekers and maladjustment between demand and supply of educated workers are some well-known causes of educated unemployment. Our education does not prepare the minds of young generation to become self-employed. On the contrary, it makes them dependent on government vacancies which are hard to come. Now, we will understand the government initiatives to tackle the problem of poverty and unemployment. Various government schemes have been undertaken in India to tackle the problem of poverty and urban unemployment. These programs have multiple objectives comprising the reduction of poverty, generation of employment and the provisioning of crucial basic services. The employment programs can be broadly categorized into two types. The first one, self-employment and wage employment programs. Some of the important employment generation programs are as follows. The first one is 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗚𝗧 that is SJSRY. This program that began in December 1997 was built upon the successful strategy of community organization in the UBSB program. SJSRY is aimed at providing gainful employment to the urban unemployed and underemployed poor through encouraging the setting up of self-employment ventures or provision of wage employment. It identifies three instruments for employment generation, that is the capacity building and credit assistance for micro enterprises, opportunities for earning wages under municipal works and intermediation in household savings. Second one is the 𝗂𝗽𝗱𝗁, the state poverty mission of the government of Kerala, aims at empowering women from poor families by improving their skills, identifying economically viable micro enterprises, providing access to credit for the enterprises and establishing market linkages to ensure sustainability of incomes. The inclusion of socio-economic parameters into social development efforts also suggests a shift in government thinking towards recognizing other forms of vulnerability, particularly of housing, basic services and education. Under this program, which is regarded as a highly successful framework for poverty alleviation and built upon the entrepreneurship model and the strategy of community development or organization developed under Urban Basic Services Program, that is UBSB and SJSRY. The other program is the Community Development Society groups from low income settlements are provided loans for a range of group enterprises through NABARD, which is called as National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, and commercial banks. Also, funds under both SJSRY and National Slum Development Program, that is NSDP, are utilized under the program to complement local and state resources to provide housing and basic sanitation services at household level to all the urban poor. Housing and other services are provided using various loan options, both with and without subsidy and with flexible payment plans. To summarize, rising unemployment and poverty are two crucial problems that many developing countries are facing today. The problem of unemployment has serious socio-economic implications, while at the individual level, unemployment leads to malnutrition, illness, mental stress, depression and deterioration of human values, and at the level of the economy, it implies underutilization of existing human capital, further forcing the humans to face extreme poverty. A high incidence of unemployment adversely affects growth not only via social unrest and political instability, but also through various other means. Poverty can be reduced only when the people are properly employed. Employment will result in the elimination of poverty and crime from the society. In the past 20 years, the labour force in India has increased by 2.5% per annum. However, the employment rate has increased at the rate of 2.2% per annum. This implies that the number of unemployed has been on a rise. Despite the rich endowment with natural resources, its poverty profile presents a somber picture of a rich nation in decline. It has been proved earlier that unemployment is one of the biggest reasons behind the commission of crimes. Hence, it is high time for us to take some innovative measure to curb unemployment and poverty.